All right, let's talk about showing loading UIs. So in React 18, we have this new feature called Suspense that we can use to show a fallback UI while a component is being rendered. Let's see it in action. So let's go to our users page, users/page. On this page, we can wrap this user table inside a suspense component and show a fallback UI while this component is being rendered, while we're waiting for this component to fetch the data. Okay, so back to this page. Here we add a suspense component and wrap the user table. And then here we set the fallback prop to what we want to display while we are waiting for the user table to render. Here we can use a basic HTML element and say loading, or we can set this to a component that renders a spinner or a skeleton. Okay. With this, if we go back to the browser and refresh the page, you see the loading message for a fraction of a second, right? Now we can also toggle this in Chrome DevTools. So bring up DevTools and go to the Components tab. Now, if you don't have this tab, you have to install React DevTools. So just go to Google, search for React DevTools. It's a Chrome extension. This one up here. Make sure to add it to Chrome so you can see the Components tab in DevTools. Now here, search for Suspense. All right, here's our Suspense component. Now on the right side, you can see that this is not suspended, meaning the data is arrived and we have the final page rendered. But we can click on this icon to suspend this component. And with this, if we go back to our page, we see the loading message. So this is a very useful technique to see what the user will experience while they're waiting for data. Okay. Now let's unsuspend it. All right. Now let's go to the network tab and refresh the page. Let's look at the document that we get from the server. So this is the user's page, and here we have the loading message. Now you might think that this is going to impact SEO because search engine bots are not going to see our data. They're not going to see the list of users. But this is not correct because this is what the client will initially see. So the server generates this page and sends it to the client, but it doesn't close the connection. So it doesn't terminate the request response lifecycle. It will then wait for the user table component to render, and then it will send additional data back to the client. This is called streaming. It's the same technology we have when streaming videos, audios, and so on. So we can also stream HTML content. Okay? So this is how Suspense works. Now, on a given page, we can have multiple Suspense components or multiple Suspense boundaries. But what if we want to put every page inside a Suspense boundary? So as we navigate between our pages, we don't have to wait for the page to render. We initially see a loading message. Well, there are two ways to do this. We can either go to our root layout component and wrap the children inside a suspense component. So here we add a suspense. And just like before, we set fallback to, for now, let's just add a paragraph and say loading. With this, as we navigate between our pages, we should see the loading message, but it happens so quickly, that's why you don't see it. In more complex applications with heavier pages, adding that loading message will give the user a better experience, okay? So this is one way we can implement this. There is another way. So let me remove this. In Next.js, we have another special file that we can put in our folders. That is a loading file. So far we have talked about page and layout files. Now let's look at loading files. So right next to our root layout, I'm going to add a loading file that is going to be inside the app folder. Here we add the loading file. Again, the extension can be JS, JSX, or TSX. In this component, we create and export a React component that should render when a page is being rendered. So we can call this loading, and here we render loading ... With that, as we navigate between our pages, we should see the loading message. Okay. Now we can take this to the next level and show a loading animation using Daisy UI. So let's head over to daisyui.com. Then let's go to the components page and look for loading here. There's also a search feature. Where is it? It's up here. Loading. All right, take a look. So we can apply this class to a span or a div, and we'll get this beautiful spinner. There are also dots, rings, balls, and so on. So I'm going to go with the spinner. We can look at the HTML markup or JSX, which is pretty much the same thing. The only difference is here we have the class name attribute, whereas in HTML we have the class attribute, okay? So I'm going to copy the second one, or maybe the third one, where we have a medium-sized loading icon, and then paste it here. All right. Now let's go back to our page, refresh. Okay, I think that's better. So that's all about showing loading UIs. Next, we're going to talk about handling errors.